Forum. So therefore, we are back in open session. We were in exec. We were open and we were in exec. Now we're back in open session. As per usual, we start with Pledge of Allegiance. Brad will lead us.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, everyone. Yes, this is a real Board of Education meeting, our last one for the year, and we have a quorum. And okay, yeah, school's over, but we still have work to do, Dr. Brown. I'm not sure why everybody just takes off, but we're good to go, and we have important items to get to, and what else? Is this the right one? Okay. This was, are we doing, I have IPI on here. Is this?
Modification of the agenda.
Yeah,
Just before that?
yeah, we got something before that. We're gonna be
Okay.
Yeah, public comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good. Go ahead, Brad. Do whatever.
There is a, we can modify the agenda and add a supplemental personnel report. It's
Okay.
dated today, it's got a single appointment on it.
Okay. Appreciate it. Without objection, we'll add that. And we do have IPI year-end presentation. I thought we did that last time, but we're doing it again. Oh, hey, Joyce. How are you? Oh, Steve, you're here. You were on the big screen last time. I wasn't sure that you're back. All right, in person.
Was my Wizard of Oz impression?
Oh, yeah.
It was pretty scary.
I'm pretty scary.
Yeah, it was pretty.
Thank you all for letting me have a few moments of your time as you wrap up your year, despite Rob having business to do. Our year is also coming to close, and I want to share some numbers of IPEI's work and the work of our affiliates as we close out our fiscal year and start to think about the next. So I want to say to begin that under the guidance of Joyce Putnam, our Grants Committee Chair, and IPEI's Board of Directors, some important numbers for you to know. IPEI made 39 red and gold grants. That's totaling $16,911 to schools across the Ithaca City School District. These are small grants of up to $500 given to a teacher one time to support a project or program in their classroom or in their school. This year, IPEI made 26 teacher grants, totaling $33,887. These grants require that a teacher partner with an expert, an artisan, a vendor, a local community partner to create a new project or a program, and these grants can be given 3 years running to help build sustainability and energy behind the project or program. This year, IPEI funded 3 Connecting Classrooms grants, one of which you heard about in detail at your previous meeting. Another you'll hear about more tonight, totaling $28,000 and some change in funding those programs. This year in total, IPEI has supported $78,000 in projects and programs across the district. We're proud to support innovative education and to allow teachers to lead in curriculum development and to address issues in the moment. Working with TST BOCES, especially with the guidance of Sunshine Miller, IPEI has routed $40,000 of our funding through various BOCES COSERs, and we anticipate a return to the district of $17,000 and some change for your fiscal year 18-19 in support of similar projects and programs. Along with our work making grants, we have 2 affiliate organizations, and they've been hard at work supporting the teachers and the students of the school district. Ithaca STEM Advocates, which supports the various STEM programs across the district, has worked to support Pitch Night for engineering and design and development, that course at IHS Technology. It's held at the Rev Incubator, and the funds that were raised through IPEI's work with Ithaca STEM went to the teams who competed at Pitch Night for the further development and implementation of their technology and engineering-based ideas. IPEI, working with Ithaca STEM, also supported the TSA chapters, the Technology Student Association chapters, and in fact help them raise funds to go. Right now, they're at competition with about 7,000 other middle school students across the nation. They're in Atlanta, and they have won one event and have made the semifinals in 6 others. The final results for today haven't come in yet. Our co-rep robotics team, working with Ithaca STEM, has 80 members. 25% of them are female, and 16% are eligible for free or reduced lunch. That is among their missions, to make co-ed robotics and its competitions available to all members of the high school who want to participate, regardless of ability to join. And we partner with them to provide access routes for funding. Our Fine Arts Booster Group affiliate, headed by Vanessa Wagner and Alice Wu, and supported by Martha Frommel, have made grants supporting the arts throughout the district with over $7,000 in various grants, awards, and scholarships to support students in the arts and performing arts across the district. Specifically, the Play It Again Ithaca Instrument Donation Program, which has been a highlight of the year, working with Sue Snedeker, and I thank her for being here tonight, receives, repairs, and donates 26 instruments and 5 related instruments to the district this year alone, allowing students access to instruments they might not otherwise have. In total, and Suze will flinch behind me if I get these numbers off, we're looking at over $7,000 in instruments donated to the district and over $2,200 in repairs to make that instrument donation possible. IPEI and its affiliates, the Fine Arts Booster Group, and Ithaca STEM Advocates, we're proud to support the district. We're proud to sponsor and fund innovative educational projects and programs that improve our community and connect our classroom to our local and our increasingly global community. Thank you to the Board of Education for your support of our work, and we look forward to working with you next year.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Public comment period, and anyone that wishes to speak can do so. Anything to add, Joyce? You're probably good. But so no public comment period. There's no student reps, and so board responses to anything that we've heard so far. Anyone? So we're all good. Well, certainly, we can't thank IPI enough. We say it about every time. Brad, I think when we
announce the various grants,
we have the consent agenda and the various grants show up all throughout the year. We talk about it fairly often, and I've mentioned it at IPI meetings that whenever we see IPI grant, it could be a small $500 red and gold, or it could be obviously Kids Discover the Trail. When we see that, we know that somewhere in the district magic is happening, and teachers are using those resources and really exponentially use that money. Just affects so many within the district, and adding significant experience for the kids in the classroom. And at the board level, we're always talking about, well, we're advocates for public education and all that, but really we're advocates for what is the student's experience every day in the classroom. That's what our job is, to make sure that it is the best it can be. This district would be far different. How long is IPI? It's 20 years now?
This is 21.
Right, and so over that period of years, the culture in the district has changed, and that there's no doubt. And so I think it's really been able to build that public partnership within the community. And Dr. Brown, we talk about that all the time. It's when Dr. Brown joined us 8 years ago, one of the first things superintendents are supposed to do is, well, can we create a foundation to support the district? I said, well, we already have that. Thank you very much. So
Keep writing checks.
right. So if anyone who's listening, if you're looking for a opportunity to support an organization in this community, and you're looking for maybe one more place to make a gift, IPI is certainly a very worthy and outstanding organization to be a part of. So thank you once again, Steve, and IPI and Joyce, for all that you do, and everyone involved with IPI. Well, that's my board response anyway. So we're going to move on to consent because we have a variety of very important things to approve. And we do have a quorum. This is an official meeting. And it is a voting meeting. And so anyone wish to move the consent agenda?
I'll move the consent as presented.
Second.
I think Pat got it.
I think Pat.
All right, we'll give it to Pat. Items to note.
There's a few to note. Had a discussion about many of these at the Facilities and Finance Committee meeting. We'll note some movement of money to reserve accounts. We're coming to the end of the year. We're authorizing the business official to make some transfers at year end into reserves. Those are all there. We're also moving some money out of a couple of reserves, liability, insurance, and tax certiorari reserves. We've determined that they may be overfunded at this point, so
Can't have that.
we're moving money out of those into our employee retirement contribution reserves. Different than you might have seen in the past. That's one we've not done recently. Contract with the Urban Renewal Agency, that's a program at BJM. That's why that's there. And lunch, breakfast and lunch prices. We had a great discussion about our food service program. Should I be, we haven't done a press release yet, have we, on the two? I'm able to mention it, though.
Yeah, you can.
All right, I can mention it. Two of the elementary schools, BJM and Enfield, will have no charge for meals next year.
For anyone.
For anyone. Any student there, there'll be no charge for meals. So kudos to Beth Kraus for getting that through, and hopefully she'll be ready for it in September. I'm sure she will be. If you have that ready, but that's a great movement to be able to move toward no cost there. We learned about the continuing evolution of the food service program to more local produce, more fresh, less processed foods. It's an evolution. It takes time, but they're shifting pretty steadily. Along with that, for those in the remaining school buildings, the other 10 buildings, unfortunately, the meals will be going up a nickel in order to balance things. But one of the things, though, that Beth will be working on this coming year, if she can get, 30% of the food sourced in New York State,
Right.
we get an extra 25 cents a meal from the state of New York. That's not in the 18-19 school year. That's starting in the 19-20 school year, so she's got a year to work in that direction. So some good things happening there, and those were all included in the reports that are here. I'm not sure there's anything else, Chris, anything else you need to comment on?
A lot of money being moved around.
All right. We good? And Brad just gave his finance committee update, so
Yeah, I think I
appreciate
did.
that. We don't need to do that later. So,
And the
any other
facilities
questions?
is on the agenda, so I'm done.
Right, exactly. We were not replicate. So important facilities discussions to come. Any other questions, comments? Move seconded. All in favor?
I'm just going to say I'm going to have to abstain because my daughter's on the personnel report. So once you've got 5 of that,
Oh, yeah. I'm good.
I'm not sure I ever did that before, abstained when my daughter was on the personnel.
Well, you should. Or you can vote on this.
This one, my daughter's not on this personnel report.
All right. If Nicole and I are good, we don't.
You were
Okay.
funny.
All in favor, that's all of us. Those opposed, those abstaining, that's Fred. Motion carries. Thank you. Dr. Brown, after much ado, it's up to you.
Thank you for the opportunity, Ms. Ainsley. Today was a special day. Thanks to the board's support and the support of our community, we are establishing a culture of love here in our school district. And that culture of love, as I've said to some folks, is not a love fest. This work is hard. And we can go through the principles, but tonight I want to point out one of those key principles around this culture is selflessness. And, as we're putting together our administrative team, I can't speak enough to how selfless the leaders in our school district are. We have educators, leaders in our school district who are evolving to meet the needs of the organization instead of the organization having to evolve to meet the needs of leaders. And I've been in districts where that's been the case, where folks get into a job and they won't move. And they stay there and they stifle the organization because of their inability to evolve. And here we have a culture where people don't do that. And that's important. Also, to speak to selflessness, we also have an organization where we have folks who expect to influence the rest of our great state. Yes, we need and want great people here, but we also need and want great people in Beacon, New York, and in DeRuyter. And over the last 7 years, we've put more folks into the superintendency, by far more folks into the superintendency in our state than any other school district in our state. We're up to, I believe, it's 8 now, and that's a lot in this state. So selflessness is one of those key principles that we talk about a lot here, and from what I'm going to share with you right now and what we've shared over the past couple of years, that you see folks who represent that very well. And we'll start right there. Dr. Matt Landau has had an outstanding year in Beacon, New York. We've missed Matt. That deputy superintendent role was one that we had advocated for years, and he did it very, very well here. And so well, so it helped him in the superintendency, and he was the first superintendent in that school district to be extended in 15 years, most recently. Congratulations to Matt. But with that, we've been missing that role, and that role has been vacated for a year. And we have, we've moved along, but we need a deputy superintendent in that role. And the person that we wanted in all along, we haven't been able to pull that person until we had the right person to replace them. And quite frankly, personally and professionally, if we were going to move somebody out of Northeast Elementary, it had to be really good. There were a replacement going in. Lily Talcott, as of tonight, thanks to the Board of Education, is going to be the Ithaca City School District's deputy superintendent. Congratulations, Lily. A teacher here, a student here in our school district, grew up in Ithaca, New York, has taught here, been an outstanding administrator, and now is going to be assuming this role that we need her in right now. Like I said, both professionally and personally, because tonight I got to go home and talk to my 2 babies about the person they love, and they imitate a lot. Everything from the way she walks on those hills, Landon gets healed just like her. Yeah, to walk like that. But when I break that to them tonight, they all going to be happy with me. The only way I'm going to be able to do that and have this work well is to tell them who's replacing them. And so as we've had this conversation about Lily being in this role, which we know needs to happen, we need to have an outstanding person go in. And I didn't have to go speak to anyone about that. A person raised their hand and said, I want to be the principal there because the organization needs an outstanding person in that role. Now, Liddy Core could be superintendent anywhere in our state right now. And quite frankly, when she chooses to be one, she will be. But she raised her hand and said, I'm going to commit not only for a couple months or a couple of years, but for a long time to Northeast to make sure it's on point. So Liddy Coyle has chosen, and we are supportive of her moving into the principalship, the most important one in the world, from my perspective, to take care of my babies and a bunch of others there, replacing Lily. Lily is going to be the principal at Northeast Elementary School. See, David Brown in a couple of days is going to be superintendent in DeRuyter. I think I say it right for the first time. I struggled with that. I didn't know it existed. I had to find it on the map. But it's a school district there. And they got some babies who needed some thinking from the Ithaca City School District, and they have David Brown who's going to deliver that. With David moving over there, we had this open position, the fine and performing arts role, which is a key one for us. And when David transitioned out of that role a few years ago, We spent 2 years trying to find a replacement for him, and we couldn't. And we had David transition back to shore up some things. But finally, we found the best person for that role, and now we are comfortable with David transitioning. Because Daphne Shalulu, and we're going to learn much more about her background, stuff people didn't know. There's an extensive background in fine and performing arts. Daphne Shalulu is going to be transitioning to be our new fine and performing arts director. Here with her amazing husband, who I know well too, Faraha. Congratulations, Daphne. An exciting move for us. But that leaves an opening in see the maze. In the next meeting, we'll put something up to show all. So now I'm just trying to talk through it and hoping it makes sense.
I need a program, Dr.
Yeah, you need a program and a map.
Flowchart.
Yeah, exactly.
Replacing Daphne, because we need to show up our pre-K program and more. We are creating a new role. We're going to be transitioning Laura Evans over to be the district's pre-K through 12 literacy officer. So we are adding more support for pre-K, but also enhancing that role as well, to have an executive team member now be point, for the first time since I've been here, I think it's the first time in a long time in Ithaca, have a person point on literacy instruction. The board has set that very aggressive goal to have every young person be reading at or above grade level by the end of 3rd grade. And we are tracking that metric in a real way now. We need to have somebody with experiences in law. Led that work for 100+ schools in Montgomery County and have done exceptional work for us the past year. And she's the best fit to take on this new role. Replacing Daphne, but doing a bit more, moving over into the office. So congratulations, Laura, on your new role. For the inclusion folks who are listening at home, that doesn't mean we're moving away from inclusion, because that work is critically important for us as well. Again, we thank Laura for the work she did this year. But the inclusion work is important for us. That's another key lever for us at the school district. So moving into that role, and I think the community has all recognized this before, another person who could have probably stayed in the role she was in for another 10 or 15 years, he probably would have built a statue outside of that school. She's done some amazing things at Carolina Elementary, and people love her there. But we all know that this is a future superintendent in our state too, and quite frankly, she should be and can be leading our inclusion efforts to now. So Mary Grover is going to be transitioning out of the building into a central role as the inclusion officer next year as well. Congratulations, Mary. So y'all Carolina folks, I know you're upset. I would be upset too. But like at Northeast, we're replacing Mary with an outstanding educator, one who's no stranger to the Ithaca City School District. Karen Rochetta has been at DeWitt twice. She liked it so much the first time she came back to it as associate principal. Has been principal at Dryden High School, has a significant amount of administrative experience, a significant amount of teaching experience, and is going to be an outstanding instructional leader at Caroline, replacing a legend named Mary Grover there. So Karen, congratulations on your appointment. That's a lot of things. We have a press release that's ready to go out here in a second. I think I covered it all. Did I cover it all? I'm a mission ready to look at all the time. Did I get it right? Yeah, you got them all. You cover them all. Huh? David? Enfield.
Oh, you didn't mention the, who's replacing Karen.
Oh, yeah, there we go. I didn't know. It was real subtle that time. You missed one. And she's not here today. Miss Donna Lucy, replacing Karen Rochetta. And we've been recruiting Donna for about a year and a half now. I've seen her all over the state. She's currently the principal at Cooperstown High School. And she has wanted to be here in this organization and as part of this culture. And she was waiting for the right opportunity. Working on a Mac night is an outstanding opportunity for anyone. And she's going to have an opportunity to learn the culture and the organization well as your associate principal. But we have big plans for Donna also. But Donna, wherever you are, welcome to the Ithaca City School. She'll be coming soon too. So yeah. We talked about it at the last meeting. I won't go through now. And with that, I still have a little bit of time left. I want to invite Liddy to talk about some professional development work for us. Please, Liddy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing I'm really happy to say, besides that I'm going to Northeast, but in this role, is I'm happy to report that this annual update that I've done for some years about professional development is really obsolete. So I'm really glad to be able to lead with that. So if you go to the next slide. The people that you see coming up here, like Lynn Vanderwoord and Heather Williams, who's a TOSA, there's a whole list of TOSAs, they do a bulk of the district PD. But what I added to the bottom is we are at a point in our district where everyone participates in PD. It's written into all our contracts, not just that employees get PD, but they provide PD and facilitate PD. Even more importantly is the people that come and talk to you throughout the year, they are the ongoing PD update that you all get during the year. Just like we talk about budget year round, you see the results of PD all year round. And I just want to speak to a couple of those things. So like the lead case study designers who came in, that was ongoing professional development. It's going to change what kids do every day. The IPI grant updates that you heard a summary of, and you're going to hear more about playground use, that's ongoing professional development. The students that came to the policy committee to talk about the code of conduct, that's a result of adults becoming better at what they do, so to make school relevant for kids. When we come to the curriculum committee and talk about what we're doing in math, that is, as a result of adults learning more and being better and better to meet the needs of kids. And you'll see in tonight's board report the hiring of many of our staff members, both teachers, aides, and assistants, to run summer programs. So you see in the next slide, a lot of money is being spent this summer, and this was something I really wanted you to see. We're spending a bulk of our PD budget this summer to pay teachers and staff, participants, and facilitators. I am not paying a single outside facilitator this summer. It is all internal because we have it all here. In addition to professional development, we are paying teachers for curriculum development and lesson planning, which I feel is a form of professional development when people can talk together and learn. And so you see, I added up the numbers, and that's one thing, but the hours and the money, they're just one piece of it. It's the opportunities for staff to take risks and learn best practices in our new programs, like you see on the board report for Project Innovation and our second year of the Farm to Table program, that's the most effective PD we have. So that's why this is obsolete. I can talk about this, but this is just a slide. So if you go to the next slide, you may have seen this before. This is our detailed framework for all staff to use in their choose their own adventure. For professional learning. This is the framework for the 18-19 school year that we are going to spend the summer working with administrators on personalizing it for their staff, for their departments, so that all adults can choose their own adventure in how they learn. And the last slide, this is what's on top of that graphic. I wanted to separate it, and I'm not going to read it to you, but I underlined the most important parts. This is a district culture shift where we're developing an expectations that everyone is a lifelong learner. And we also spelled out how we believe this happens, and that's on the bottom, is that we do job-embedded PD with supportive coaching, looking at data. So that's why this is obsolete. So coming here to say we're doing this workshop, that workshop, yep, we do that. Yep, we spend a lot of money. But the most important thing is we've developed a culture of lifelong learners for all our adults, and we are embarking on that journey, continuing that journey using that framework this year. So, that's all I've got.
Thank you.
Thanks, Letty.
Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you for this part.
We don't often applaud the superintendent. So way to end the year well.
Is that for me or her?
Right, way to end the year well. Thank you, Lynn. The agenda says work session updates. Brett already mentioned a few. Is there anything else we really need to touch base on from any of the work sessions at this time?
HR wrapped up all tenure reviews for upcoming teachers, so we are moving on.
Legislative advocacy, I'll just say that the legislative session ended without a vote in the Senate on the local law that we had asked for, having to do with the health care insurance reserve. So it passed the Assembly and never got to the floor of the Senate.
There you go.
There you go.
Albany at its best.
At its
So,
best, they went home without moving a good number of things.
Well, it's going to be a holiday in a few weeks. Why?
I know, I'm so picky.
I just want to say that the last meeting of the curriculum committee, actually because of people's illness and absence, ended up being Lydia and I having a conversation, looking at some of the things that she was just talking about, what's happening this summer, looking at changes in the math curriculum. And I'm glad we had that time, and I've been very grateful for all the work we've done together on curriculum these years, and I'm going to miss you in that role, but we have some new people I also already know and will enjoy working with if I'm on curriculum as we move forward and build on what we've done.
I think you almost have to be, but there's always choice. You don't have to be.
I don't have to be.
Pat, I'm really tired about hearing about policy, but policy work continues
Policy work
constantly.
continues. Our current project, which is a very large project, is a revision of the Code of Conduct for the district, which will be a comprehensive K through 12 Code of Conduct, and we've been working with Mike Simons and Kate Reed to make sure that it reflects district practices and New York State law. And I will confess that it is not the most riveting of the policy work that I've done in the past 7 years, but it is crucially important and time sensitive and legally required, so we press on.
Thank you,
And
Pat.
it's currently 43 pages or something like that.
Yes, sir.
Yep. And we are going to have, I believe, we've already scheduled a policy committee meeting for July, somewhere at the end of July. I forget, we talked about it, maybe July 20th, could it be? To continue to work on the Code of Conduct, because it's time sensitive.
Yes.
To those of you who thought the board does not meet in the summer, actually we meet year-round, and we will meet next Monday. Nicole, did you have anything to add? Any work session stuff? You good? Okay.
I'll just piggyback off of Moira in terms of missing you and doing work with you and the PD and always being intentional and being able to take feedback.
I've appreciated working with you all.
She's not going anywhere, y'all. Just
I go to a lot of
yeah, a personal representative in this town.
Let's skip a few now.
We will be meeting next Monday at 8 o'clock in the morning for our reorg meeting, because it is mandated by the state of New York that we do that by July 7th in order to leave the week for the rest of activities. We will meet next Monday. We will meet in July 24th or something. We will have a work, a voting meeting in July. We will meet in August. There's a lot going on, and
Facilities and Finance will meet on the 17th of July.
so the work session dates are already in the system, and board members will have an opportunity to list their favorite work session topics or committees, whatever you want to call it, and we'll make sure that we have every meeting covered. But the work goes on, and to that point, we're going to go ahead and talk about recess. Instead of work, we'll talk about recess. But how come? But it sounds like recess is becoming work. That's. Feel free.
Hi, everyone. I want to start by saying thank you so much to the board and to Dr. Brown for appointing me into this new position. I'm really excited and honored to have the opportunity to serve all of our kids throughout the district. I'm looking forward to some good work. So Caitlin and I are here to talk a little bit about recess, as you said, in transition to play. As you know, for the past several years, our school district has embarked on a large curriculum undertaking for our elementary school students. And we have focused on case studies or project-based learning, interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary units. And we've been really excited to create opportunities for our students to think creatively and collaborate and make meaning with one another inside the classroom and sometimes outside of those classroom walls. And so it made sense to transition some of those principles outside, to our learning spaces outside. So when we had the opportunity to work with Dr. Beth Myers, who's a first grade teacher at Northeast, and Rusty Keeler, who has been instrumental in creating the Ethnic Children's Garden that you may be familiar with, in order to create this Reimagining Recess grant with the amazing help of IBEI, we said, absolutely, let's make this transition to help our kids do more outside. So the Reimagining Recess program at Fall Creek and at Northeast has really two large components. So one is to create engaging opportunities for students to work with loose parts, what you might think of as junk, right? You see on the screen there. In order to create open-ended, play-based experiences. And then the other part or component of this grant was to provide professional development to us, to our teachers, to our education support professionals, and to families as well, in order to help them become facilitators of this kind of play and this kind of work for children. And I would say that, walking into this, we know that free play, especially outdoors, is associated with better outcomes for children's cognitive growth, their social emotional growth, and their physical development as well. And we know that it may be especially important for children who live in poverty. So going forward with this was a no-brainer. And Caitlin's going to talk a little bit about what we discovered. We'll share a little snippet so you can actually see the kids in action. And then we'll talk about next steps.
Thank you. So like Lily said, just as we're putting students in the driver's seat of their own learning in the classroom, we're doing the same and allowing that to be happening at recess during play. So the adult role is really shifting from the designer and director of what is allowable on recess grounds to like a facilitator coach model. The children are born for it, right? They develop, they lead their own play, they're wonderful, creative minds. And that's not to say that adults don't have an important role outside. They are often engaging kids in conversation about their play, especially if there's like a little bit of a safety concern. They'll say, what's your plan for that? Like, let's talk about it. Let's talk it through and figure it out. But not to intervene and redirect if it's not necessary. The goal for adults outside at recess with kids is to find a way to yes whenever possible. So interestingly, we've noticed and had many conversations with those folks that adults are having more fun too. They are much more engaged in what the kiddos are doing, and the relationships between children and educational support professionals are improving incredibly. We've had some great conversations just among adults as well that ask us to reflect on our own experiences as children and on our beliefs of what play is all about. We're asking each other lots of important questions like, should objects only be used for the purpose intended? So that's a direct quote. The question that came up just recently. And it reminded me of the famous creativity test by George Land, where when it was referred to in the Ken Robinson TED Talk, where it looked at 5-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 15-year-olds, and adults, and sort of like rated their creativity. So a 5-year-old tends to be a genius in the area of creativity, and that genius steadily is taught out of them. Kids begin to believe that a paper clip is only used to hold a piece of paper together as they grow. But during Reimagining Recess, we don't tell them what it's for. They define for themselves what can be done, and then they test their ideas through play. Let's take a look and watch them do a little bit of that.
To give you a little snippet. We will post this full video on our Twitter pages so you can take a look at an incredible amusement park actually that was created by 5th graders as well. We want to thank IPEI and all of the donors because without them none of this would have been possible. And we want to thank Dr. Brown for his undying support and the board as well. We'd also love to thank the people from the Just Play Project, especially Beth Myers and Rusty Keeler, and our education support professionals who have really been at the forefront of this and have taken this on as their own, which has been pretty wonderful. Lastly, we also want to thank Kim Wilkinson and the entire OT department at the college. They are in the midst they collected data and they are writing this up for us and doing the analysis this summer in regard to the effects of the in terms of next steps, we are looking forward to meeting with our colleagues in our 8 elementary schools and connecting with them about how they can take some of these same principles and use them in their own schools. Cool. Thanks.
So you just need donations from stuff out of the garage, and the level of investment is pretty.
There are some things that I said no way on, I'm going to be honest.
Questions?
I'll just say
Go ahead.
that the other night I was with a bunch of folks and one of the group was a parent of a couple of kids at Fall Creek, and she was talking about this, and basically she said, this is the greatest ever. So.
Well, if there's no one else, but I do find it interesting since, well, I'm a little older, but it's what kids basically used to do very naturally all day long. Before, parents regimented their day, that we had to do play dates and you had to do this, that, and practices in a few minutes, and then regimented their lives. And then, so now we have to teach kids how to, well, we don't have to teach them how to play. We have to let them play, right? So, not every, well, so few kids grow up on farms anymore where you could just, there was stuff to do. And you could build whatever, and you could build forts out of hay. But most kids don't have that opportunity anymore. And so I understand it, and I think hopefully this can roll out to the other schools. And what's the barrier to rolling out to the other elementary schools? I'm looking, why not? Would it take a grant for every elementary school to make? No, I'm serious. Well, part of it is, would it take a grant for every elementary school to do this, or can it just roll?
I think we can find some creative ways to do it with the resources we have, given the number of people who now understand the principles and practices.
And that's really, well, we're talking about professional development again, I guess.
Yeah, we are.
Right, I mean, that's,
But we grew them in here, in-house.
Very much like how Lydia was saying, it's all embedded, it's seeping out to the other schools.
but I am cringing a bit when we're hanging stuff from a tree and sort of getting tangled in it.
Don't let our insurance agent see that.
So, but, it's outstanding. I can only hope that, we see this at every, we can't do it at the high school, I guess, right? That's- So, but thank you. That was great. So Amanda, capital improvement planning. And I've had to talk too much, so I'm going to let Brad and some other folks talk here a little bit.
Great. So first I want to thank you all for allowing me to present on this topic this evening. We did a deep dive at the Finance Facilities Committee meeting the other evening. That discussion was led by our architect, Chris Gowitz from Tetra Tech. We also have Doug from Tetra Tech and Paul here from our own facilities department, the director of that. So that is just the small group of a team that has been meeting consistently to discuss the future of facilities in Ithaca City School District and planning for capital projects in the near future and beyond. As you know, we've really done a good work around trying to get a handle and education for everyone around the budget, and we are hoping to do the same sort of process and tone around capital project planning. So with that, you have to start with sort of a capital project 101. Before we can talk really about anything, we want to make sure that people really understand what it is that we mean. Many people see us doing little projects here and there. We use what's called the capital reserve from our own reserve funds to be able to do small things every single year. You might see paving in Caroline, so that Mary's, the bottom of her car doesn't fall out. She has to use her tag to tie it back together. We've done things at almost all of the schools. We've used things from what's called a capital outlay. That's a small amount of money that the state allows us to utilize every single year and get aid back in that same year. It's capped at $100,000. We're using that for entryways and bathrooms across the district. We just finished up our energy performance contract, which is another way that we've utilized funds that were available for specific projects around our building envelope, our windows, our lighting, and creating a more energy efficient space throughout the district. We're also entering into the Smart Bond right now, which is another area of funds that was dedicated as allocations to school districts. Everybody gets a certain amount, you spend it, and then you get reimbursed, and we'll be starting that work as well. Those are all wonderful projects, and over the course of time, they've sort of been able to help us address some of the needs that we have, especially around safety and security. But if you visited our buildings recently, they're tired. They look like they are occupied by lots of kids daily, and that's exactly what is happening. And we're not putting really a lot of a commitment in terms of long-range planning into the buildings, because we had a few years there where we were wrapping up a project from a number of years ago in 2007, which was a $98 million project. That project took many, many years to complete. We didn't just get the $98 million right away and then spend it, but it took some time. And so that's wrapped up. And when you look at all the projects that we've been doing along with that one, you start to develop a schedule of sort of the way that we want to spend funds to sustain our building operations over the course of time. And it is that time again to look at that larger planning, that planning for all of our buildings, not because we got an allocation from the state or we're just sort of getting little bits of money here and there from our reserve account. We really need to sort of take some time to be able to plan for the long term and look at the way that we want our buildings to look and feel. So Casey, if you don't mind going to the next slide here. This is pretty small here. But I wanted to show you, this will be available online. And again, I want to thank the folks at Tetra Tech. They are really brilliant at putting these graphics together for us in a very easy to understand way. I shared these online in the principals forums. We've also had these available to the public soon. We'll be creating an area of the website for the project, the capital project planning. Right now, just so the community is aware and the board is aware, these are the stages that any capital improvement process goes through, and we're currently in this green zone right now, with a goal of completing this green zone so that we can go out for a public vote and time it up with our budget vote. Votes, we have many, many polling sites when we do votes for things like a capital improvement process or the budget or for seats on the board. That does cost us money. So we really felt like this was a proper time to align those two things, as well as that's the time when most people come out to vote. And we really do want to try to embrace a process that includes as much community voice as possible and as much feedback as possible so that we know that we're truly representing what it is that community wants in all of the buildings and facilities. And so as you can see here, if you can, you have really good eyes from the audience, but we have paper copies as well, Chris, and you're more than welcome to hand that out to the audience and the board. We actually have three parts of this planning phase here. There's the facilities evaluation, the project development, and the community outreach. The facilities evaluations are in the form daily of Paul getting work orders and talking to folks and having frequent meetings with building level principals. There's also a building condition survey that happens every 5 years. It's mandated by New York State. It gets really a deep dive from an engineering perspective, an architect perspective, heating, cooling, foundation, everything that you can imagine around what would go into sort of evaluation of a building. We look at all of those things, and that sort of is a roadmap, per se, of what all could be. And then that process obviously has to be sort of trimmed down, and you have to take into account the priorities that the community, the board, the principals, directors, the staff all feel are valuable. We currently are looking at some of those needs for projects, right, that we want to identify to move forward. Those will become part of a project scope. Those will go into a sort of a project plan that will be vetted back and forth between key players and stakeholders. And then we'll have this initial project planning. And the team right now, we have a larger team, that'll come on the next slide, but right now we're just sort of talking about all the stakeholders in the district, the financial advisors, the architect team, the construction management firm, we'll be talking to the school board, obviously, bond council. There's all these players that come together, along with state ed, both state aid planning and facilities planning. Those are two really important agencies that we'll be working with all along the way. Both of them one gives us sort of approval for what we plan to do in terms of the scope of the work from a facility standpoint. Are we meeting code? Is that door supposed to go there? Is that okay? Is this ADA compliant? And then there's also the state aid standpoint of saying, well, we let you do that, but you have a cap on state aid that would come back to you around those projects. So we have to work with both of those departments, and those take a lot of time. And when we get a little further in there, this larger blue line represents sort of the graphic of that's sort of the holding zone, the holding pattern when we get to New York State Ed, when we're ready to submit things. So we're pretty much right here. Once we develop sort of this scope and we really tease it out with the key stakeholders, we will then develop our community outreach plan in terms of our marketing. And this is really the first part of it for public. You see me often around budget. You'll be seeing me often around capital project planning. So I'll be doing a little bit of double duty. So I'll make sure that I keep it sharp and interesting. The next phase, after we get a vote, Either if it goes down, we go back into this process. If it's approved, we move into the design and approval phase of things. That's where you take sort of that sense of scope and budget and time frame, and you start to really get into the design phase of the schematics, and you're talking about the detailed program components. You start to develop your budgeting very specifically. You look at contingencies. You look at all the systems and finishes that go along with that. We really rely on our architects and our CMs at that time to sort of counter check on each other's sort of projections and on their estimates. And then once we come up with a complete project, all those specificities of that project, we then deliver it to essentially the authorities, those state and departments, especially facilities planning, to be able to get feedback on that process. That can take a very long time. There's some ways to kind of increase the likelihood that you get further up in the line by doing an early review and things, but who knows, by the time that we're ready to submit this, they could have changed by then. So we'll keep informing you as we go through the process as to where we are and what the state is of the state. After that is approved by the state, you go out for bids, and then this is when you have the construction. And that's when everybody sort of remembers that, oh, right, I voted on that, right? And that's when you start to do the groundbreaking and the movement of, where will these classrooms be set up, or is there going to be disruption or not? And you have a whole timeline and a plan for making sure that there is minimal disruption. That there is minimal disruption to this educational process, right? Because the whole goal of this process is to enhance the educational experience of our students, of our staff, our communities, our family members, right, that are coming into our buildings day in, day out. The learning spaces are impactful. Our buildings are impactful. They build our, all of what we do, our engagement, our sense of empowerment, our sense of belonging, and our sense of pride. And so this is really that time for us to be able to do those things and do it well. So this is sort of capturing that capital improvement process kind of 101. And I don't do it as well as Chris, so I hope I did it justice. But okay. So the next slide, Casey, if you don't mind. I think I mentioned a little bit in sort of that gray rectangle that was in the green section, this early section. This actually is a sort of a breakout of some of the key stakeholder groups that we feel are really valuable, and we've sort of taken this back and forth with the board. And as you can see here, we have everything from the admin group, which is all the principals and directors, and we tried to get really specific around all of the programs that we see here in Ithaca City School District. This group will be meeting with this summer. We're going to actually be setting up professional development sessions. We're going to be working with building specific data with a district vision, talking about sort of like what it is what can we do in spaces. So for example, Max here and will say, okay, one of the things that I know we need to focus on in DeWitt is that performing arts space in the middle of your building that's sort of connected to the cafeteria, it's still got carpeted walls. That's wrong. Right? I thought those went out, I don't know, would you say 80s? 70s. 70s, right? I mean, 80s if you were on a tight budget, right? So we don't want that anymore, right? We want to have the pride in our buildings, and we want to make sure that people can utilize those spaces in many different ways. So right now, that's imagined as a just performing arts space, but that could be a large group instruction room. So that's just one example. Another example, maybe at the high school, we're talking about how do we welcome our families and welcome traffic in and out of our buildings without disrupting the buildings themselves, right? How do we have sort of a welcome community center that says hello to community members, but that it doesn't just let them go right into the building itself where students are. And so we have to be really cognizant of sort of the world that we're living in right now as well, and bring our buildings up to that modern day thinking. We have the PTAs and boosters. Obviously, there's a lot of us in this room who serve as liaisons to those groups, as well as groups that come together here, often led by Dr. Brown. And so those are the kinds of groups where we're going to be sharing this information with them and getting their feedback on all the ideas that we're coming together. And again, this is in no specific order, because if it was, I would have, of course, started at the top, and the Board of Ed is going to be clearly guiding this process all the way through, making those key decisions, hosting us at both the board meetings and also at the facilities and finance committee meetings. I believe that this coming year we've decided to join those two meetings together into one, because when you look at financing and you look at facilities, yes, there's the district budget, but the debt service that would support a capital project is so integral in all of that, that we're gonna just sort of join those meetings and have a little bit of overlap, have one and then go right into the other. Obviously, in the middle here is exec team. There's a lot of players there. We've been very fortunate to have Liddy Coyle coming to a lot of these meetings. We'll continue to have other exec team members. It shouldn't just be the business official. It really should be a lot of thinkers. And if it's not at the meetings where we're at the architect group, we bring that information back and vet that always. We have here the influential community groups. We've just listed a few. We didn't mean to leave anybody off, but these are a lot of Ithaca-centric groups that we share so often. Information, staffing, children, families, resources, right? Those are folks that really take part in our community and are part of our community, and we want to make sure that they're a part of this process as well. We have ICSD staff, all building level staff and department level staff. I know that Paul has already started to meet with his maintainers. They are the eyes and ears of all of like sort of the circulatory system, right, of our buildings. They're the ones that they know. We may not see it, but they know. And so we're already starting to meet with them. And then we also have a student box here. We really, because we are Ithaca, and this is how we just do things here, we want to make sure we have a student voice. So there's some conversation even about young people perhaps even doing some case study work around the capital project, thinking about what a project might look like, and then maybe being able to fund that through the capital project work. So we're really excited about what that might be. There's already a sitting superintendent advisory council. That'll be a really big part of the feedback. And then here you just sort of see kind of an information process. And we're sort of talking about how do we bring in information through Google's forms and meetings, going up through some executive team facilitators that reach out to admin group, going back to the referendum planning team, which is the architects and the construction management and folks from exec team, Dr. Brown, and then we go up to facilities, to the Board of Ed, and then to the voters. And that really can be cyclical in a way, but ultimately it ends up there with the voters. Okay? So the next slide, Casey, thanks so much, is just a simple, very conceptual timeline. Chris, Paul, Doug, myself, we meet very regularly. We meet about every single week. And we try to just put together kind of a very gross overview of what this might look like. Obviously, all through these months, April to June, May to September, September through January, we're going to be really like intensively working with different stakeholder groups as appropriate. And so we'll be working through very similar to what we listed on that other slide in a very detailed way. This is just sort of putting it on a timeline, okay? And again, always with that scope being finalized by March so that we have that final communication plan, and then by May going out for the vote on that project. By that point in time, we would hope that we would have had a lot of community forums, that we would have a lot of information out there, whether it be backpack mailers, videos on the website. As I said, we'll be creating a website just for this purpose, for people to be able to look at the minutes of meetings and get information if they cannot attend in person. So then finally, as we were talking about scope and what this might look like, the board, we had a really fantastic discussion at the last Finance and Facilities Committee meeting about what would it look like if we represented the voice of the Ithaca City School District community in terms of how we would want to think about this project in its relationship to the voters, right? So the project scope will not be influenced by how many times we go out to vote. The project scope, there's needs in these buildings, whether they're infrastructure or they're creating large group learning environments or they're better entryways. The reality is that though, what is it that the community feels is the way that they would want to give feedback by a vote on the projects that we so choose. And so we've sort of put together 3 options here for the next 10 years. All of them will involve long-range planning. All of them will involve community feedback. All of them will involve, a level of dialogue and the ability to be able to look at our buildings as the learning centers and the work centers and the community centers for us. But, you know, they're just a little bit different in the way that we want to sort of get that feedback from the voting public as to how do you want us to do this. Option A is going out one time in May 2019 and asking for a lump sum of money that would be able to sustain the scope of work over the course of 10 years. And obviously those would still be phased. There's no way we could possibly do all of the work in year 1 or 2 or 3. We'd have to actually take whatever was granted to us and then spread that out in an intentional planning model and move that across the amount of time, 10 years. Option B is taking that, instead of just one large vote, we go out for one vote in 2019 and another vote in 2024, 5 years later. So that sort of gives you the two opportunities to be able to go to the voters to say, you know, to vote on scope of the project. And then the third, option C, is breaking that down into 3 votes. And as you can see, it's just a situation of shortening the timeline to about 3 years each time versus the 5 years or just the 1 year. And so that's sort of at the Finance and Facilities Committee meeting, we all agreed that this was sort of the conversation that needed to be had. Like, we wanted to do a little bit of learning, a little bit of understanding of what a capital project would look like for us. And we sort of know that the scope, however we go for it, will be the same. We'll work on the funding of that with our fiscal advisors, and we'll work to ensure that that lines up with the debt service, so there is either no or minimal impact to the debt service line in the budget, which would then result in tax payments from the voters. But this was sort of that conversation where we said we wanted to make sure that we had together as a group to determine what feels right and what fits right for our community. So with that, Brad, I'm going to turn it over to you as the chair of both Finance and Facilities.
So let's emphasize your last piece there. One of the objectives here is to both get work done on safety and health, maintenance, and and also on improving learning spaces. But we recognize we can't do it all at once. First, you can't build it all at once. And second of all, we don't want to take on all the debt at once. Our objective on the debt side is to stay relatively steady in our debt service over the course of these years. And, you know, welcome to the world of the tax cap. It would be interesting to see, you know, if our debt service goes down and we allow it to go down, we would then actually lower our tax rate, but then at some point the buildings have to be maintained, and these are excluded, debt service is excluded from the tax cap. So while everybody thinks they're going to get about a 2% tax increase, we could jump the tax 12% 1 year, and it would be excluded from the tax cap. We want to avoid those kinds of ups and downs, and so our objective is to try and stay as steady as we can on debt service so that it has no impact one way or the other, that it's embedded, it's part of what we're paying for, but it doesn't change your tax rate one year to the next. So that's our objective. So even if we do option A, we're still not going to expend the money, borrow the money and expend it in year 1. It's going to be out over 5, 6, 7 years, again, trying to keep debt service steady. And the same with B and C. There is, Amanda said, it isn't going to change the general scope of what we're going to do. The dollar scope will end up being roughly the same for all 3 options. It's just, do we go to the voters once with a larger number? And that was what was done in 07. And that didn't get all expended at once. But go to the voters once with a larger number. If you're uncomfortable with that, do we go twice? Do we go 3 times? I think in order to maintain our buildings, in order to do some of the safety changes and entrances and such that we want to do, I think your dollar volume is going to end up the same pretty much whichever way you go. So what we wanted to talk about tonight is what folks thought about. Do we want to go single number, you know, vote in 2019, and your next 6 or 7 years of borrowing and 6 or 7 years of construction are all set to go? Or do you want to choose to do a certain number of things in 2019 and then go back to the voters again 3 years later, 5 years later? I know we could obviously change these to other options. I mean, if this is, kind of a 1, 2, or 3 vote option.
Right, because what we're asking for is the authorization to spend up to a certain dollar amount.
It's the same as...
There's no term that you're asking for, right?
It's the same as the
There's no-
annual budget. You're asking
Right.
for a number at the top, if you'll recall. The
Shall not exceed.
Shall not exceed.
That's
If you'll recall, the 2007, because unfortunately there was a recession, after we got that approved, we actually bought more things than we thought we were going to be able to buy. Construction came in lower than had been projected, and Paul, correct me, there were 2 more roofs done, and I can't remember, there were a couple of other projects like that.
Entranceways.
Entranceways, right, yeah. So there were a number of things we were able to add on and do that were not anticipated initially. We got a lot, although I wouldn't say a recession's a lucky thing. But
We took advantage.
we took advantage of a
an
bad
opportunity.
situation, and we ended up doing well with that. Well, this would be similar. You're going to approve a dollar amount, and that's all we can go. And it'll buy what, we'll buy as much with it as we can buy with it.
Each separate project has to be approved by the board along the way. Go through
State
design.
Education Department.
Right, and by the state ed, not everything is not approved up front.
Correct.
We had to go through multiple steps for additions at LECS and Ithaca High, the second gym, certainly fine and performing arts. These were all done over a period of years. We talked about it, the 3.5-hour meeting, was it? I think it was 3.5 hours. Thank you very much. But it was... but it was important for us at that meeting to have a good discussion. Not all of us are here now, but Brad mentioned 2007. We were able to get approval for that $90 million at that point, and then the Great Recession hit. We certainly were able to. We were on time and under budget. I will just point out, City of Ithaca did not build during that period of time. They held off, and projects that they were doing, their bids are coming in over. The Ithaca Commons is a good example of they had estimates for what it should be, could be. Estimates came in. They were building at higher peak. They had to pull back. They could not do what they really wanted to do. They did the basics, but then they had to pull back and not be able to really do what the initial vision was. But that's just the way it works. So we part of the discussion was just is it better to just do it once and then have the flexibility? As we've said, nothing can be done all at once, but if we do have the authorization, then if we waited 5 years, perhaps there's an opportunity to bundle a few projects, because the pricing, well, let's do the Ithaca High entryway and we'll do DeWitt and Boynton, and let's bundle that, and we're going to get a great price on that from that one bidding process. But if we broke it up, then we have to wait. So it provides more flexibility, but know that it took. We were paying down debt every year, and so as Brad says, we are trying to manage that. And,
We're trying to stay at roughly the same debt service. I mean, folks, what's our outstanding debt now? It's in the high 60 millions, I think. We're paying off $7 million a year or something.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
at $8 million right now a year, and it went up a little bit because of the EPC, but it's right at that.
And we'd like to stay at roughly that. And just so folks at home understand, we're nowhere near our borrowing capacity. Statutory borrowing capacity is somewhere in the 250 million range. So we never get. We're never going to propose anything near that. So we'd like to keep the overall debt in kind of that 50 to, 80, 90 total outstanding at any given moment range, in order to keep our debt service relatively steady.
And that's to maintain, just remember, I mean, it's to maintain 1 million square feet.
1 million square feet of building.
1 million square feet of building, and so over, I mean, if you think about what it takes to maintain your home every year, right?
Everybody at home
We have to do
understands
that.
children are rough on real estate.
Yes,
Put 6,000 of them in your home,
yeah,
see how long it lasts.
that's right.
That adult staff is a little hard too, I just.
So,
Only in some,
Yeah. Go ahead.
so my only question, just understanding, is there any benefit from going to a B or a C where you just look at where you're at and you reflect and then say, okay, we see us needing X amount more over this period of time? Where are the other benefits that I'm missing?
Potentially, if you go with B or C, you can be a little more focused on a smaller number of projects during this coming year, between now and making a decision. In other words, you're going to do one more vote or 2 more votes at another time. It allows the team to be a little more focused on a smaller group of projects. I think that would be an advantage. As you point out, you could shift gears. What we're arguing is, I think we're going to be able to shift gears in 4 or 5 years anyway. We're not going to try and tie ourselves to specific projects, maybe to specific buildings, but not specific projects. We're not trying to tie ourselves down in that regard. The question just becomes which of these is the better option for both managing our debt service, managing the building maintenance, and managing the voters' expectations? Is this okay with them? Are we going to scare them if we have a similarly large project as we did 12 years ago? Although, as I say, it took a good number of years for all of that to actually get done and the money to actually be borrowed. Or are we taking a risk by going with 3 votes that we might lose a vote?
Well, you can't anticipate those
Yeah,
dates.
right.
What the
Oh, you
future
don't know,
holds,
and you
yeah.
can't anticipate what the economy would look like in 2022 or 2024. Whether you would then defer things or what you would do. I mean,
How old am I in 2025?
yeah, I hear you. How many years will you?
How many more years?
What's your feeling? What do you think?
When you mentioned the state of the economy, not being able to predict things, and you have the opportunity to decide, you can manage as you go along focused projects. So if you have a lump sum to work with, you assess, you refocus, because things will shift. You don't know what the needs, certain specific needs will be. They may become a priority where before they weren't.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd rather go with that.
What was I going to say? I argued a bit for A the other day. Going back to our previous experience, 2007, the economy was okay. It was, we had been through 2000 and the stock market pullback, but the economy was okay in 2007. We passed 2008, 2009 recession. Conversations on the board level was, sure, we got started on some of the projects. I don't think we should do LACS, certainly not the second round at Ithaca High School. Bill Sherman, we really just can't take these on. And we argued that we're given an opportunity to do more with less money, and that we should push through, and we could not guarantee everything was going to be okay, but it was an opportunity. So if we had to do another vote in 2010, I find it hard to believe that the folks that say, yeah, let's go ahead and borrow and start building. And so we will be looking at a district with LACS in the old building, without the addition, Ithaca High without a second gym, still the issues with the learning spaces for phys ed. Bill Sherman would still have the Cafe Gymtorium. Well, that was a term that was used, and that we were trying to make sure that we had those learning spaces in the district. So we did big projects then. This is going to be different. But the vision of this, safety, maintenance, and learning spaces is going to be the same throughout 10 years, 20 years.
Yeah, we don't have an expectation that we're adding square footage anywhere. Now, I may very well eat those words and we'll be adding space somewhere, but along the way, once they're done with the evaluations.
But I think
but I don't think you're looking at a lot of new space here.
But I think what we're hearing certainly from the community is we need to address some issues at some buildings that were built in 1970 and back in 1970 with Boynton and DeWitt. I think it was 1970. But well, yeah, you just you know,
72.
You walked in.
72.
Well,
He would.
yeah, well, I was here then too, but it's well, yeah, you just kind of walked in. And the guy, well, yeah, back in the day, it was open concept, and you just kind of walked in and said hi and left. And I don't know that there was actually, you went to the office for anything back then. I really don't. You know, just kind of, we wandered around. The doors weren't locked. It was good. It was great. It was the 70s, man. It was great. It's a different world.
Teaching without walls.
Well, no, exactly. There was a smoking, just outside the cafeteria, there was a smoking area at the different high school where students and staff could contemplate the afternoon. But, just to point out. So the world has changed. So we need to address, yes, we need to address entryways, we need to address who's in the building when, and that, yeah, that's going to be a priority. And but obviously when you do that, it's the maintenance. Fine and Performing Arts addition, that tremendous addition to the district, that's going to be 10 years old soon. I mean, time flies. I mean, the newest buildings are going to be 10 years old, so that we've added on. So you just have to keep plugging away on. Nicole, weigh in.
I waited last week when we had our 3.5-hour meeting.
Well, hung in there. That was it was.
I know it's out to that one.
Well, I'm willing, I wasn't sure at the last meeting. I think I'm leaning toward option A. I think take the one vote, see if the voters will go along with us to manage the debt service over time and spend that money over a period of years. Pat, preference?
It's a tough proposition.
Pat doesn't like to spend it.
I understand the need for maintenance and upgrades of facilities. I think the precedent of the 2007 vote and what happened in 2008 and 2009 is a compelling argument for one vote. I do have concerns about taxpayers looking at a very large expenditure if they don't have a clear understanding of how that's going to impact the bottom line year by year, because the taxes that people pay, even though they've gone down a little bit each year, is a really large concern with people I talk to in the district. And so I do have a concern about saying, here's, we're going to spend $60 million after $98 million without a very clear I would say timeline, whatever, but also, can future boards be counted on to keep the promise of Brad's, not putting too much debt service on. Not every configuration of human beings is as fiscally savvy and fiscally responsible as the people we have on our board now. And I have been in meetings where people with a certain interest, like, just put it in the budget, people will vote for it. And we have seen that, a number of times, and I don't believe that's either realistic or fair to taxpayers. And I do like the idea that people who are living in the district 5 and 7 years down the road have a say 5 or 7 years down the road on what they're doing. But I think for expediency purposes, option A, and if it doesn't pass, then back to the drawing board. That's a long answer, I know.
I'll just repeat what Pat just said. For expediency, option A, and then if it doesn't pass, we go back to the drawing board.
There's some common sense to that. If you start out with C, you can't
backtrack.
you can't go the other way.
Yeah.
If C doesn't pass, you can't say, oh, let's triple that, then go back. So,
Yeah, that probably would work.
probably not. What is the need for?
We need to know what their
That helps.
direction is on
If we're
planning.
hearing A, that helps us. We can now go back to the drawing board and get it.
I say that, I understand the con of choosing A is we're asking the staff to digest a lot of material this year.
And also put together a clear communication plan for what this means, how it won't increase our debt service if we're responsible. I mean, we'll have that
That's-
talking points.
Yeah, we need people to understand, our objective is not to change the debt service substantially at all, and certainly not enough to impact the tax rate.
And fortunately, we have folks on the board who went through this before. I was new when we were managing it, so we have some experience in navigating something. So it is a good time to do option A from our perspective because of the experiences and the timing. So we just got to get busy. We know what we're doing next year.
And Nicole, you were
Welcome.
Goes with A.
right, and just for the record, we did discuss the other night. So, yeah, we're just volunteers. So it's we expect there's a reason that Tetra Tech is hired, and obviously you all are going to be our partners through this. A, B, or C, you are our partners as we move through here to get to the solution, the conclusion, but so we can have a successful vote. However it eventually works out, we need and want a successful vote, and so we're looking for guidance from Tetra Tech and certainly our administration, and we're glad to go talk. So that's not the. That's not, we're not just giving the administration and an outside consulting firm really carte blanche to go do whatever. I mean, it can't work, it does not work that way. The elected board is involved at every step of the way, and that's the way it is, and that's our responsibility. So, we recognize our responsibilities, and we'll glad to take it on, Chris. Right? Is that?
That's what we're here for.
Right. So
We're ready.
Okay, we'll get to work on option A. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And that was not a vote, so it was just
It's guidance.
that was guidance.
Guidance.
All right.
That's all that we needed. Thank you.
Right. For the minutes, that wasn't a vote. That was just guidance. we have a few more school district business items, and then we're gonna wrap up for the
We'll
year.
move the athletic merger with EAC Montessori for the 2018-19 boys and girls 7th and 8th grade sports, all seasons.
Like for everything, just everything,
That's what they're asking for.
and I think that's fine.
Yeah. I seconded it.
Usual rules, we're not displacing anybody
Right?
in our buildings. Okay.
Yeah.
We kind of got good at this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Second by Maura. All in favor? That's everyone.
And we'll move the merger with various school districts for girls ice hockey 2018-19 season.
I second that.
All right. All
All right.
I was almost a mic drop on that one. I was like, oh. And there's a whole list of schools, and we've been through this before. If it helps numbers, and
And they don't know whether they're
right.
1, 0.
Right.
This just allows you to do it.
So move seconded. All in favor? That's everyone. And something about an annual convention authorization.
And I'll move the authorization for the NISBA annual convention.
Second.
Second by Moira. There are some of us, we do have to vote. Board members will be attending. Dr. Brown, I believe you are presenting.
The keynotes this year.
I had said that I wanted to go, but my name is not on
Featured
this.
session.
I will add your name.
Oh.
Okay.
Did
And,
that mean we get moved out of the room with 40
Yes,
seats?
supposedly.
Yeah.
That was,
I don't have to work the back of the room anymore?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, all
in
right.
the big room.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what.
Emotional. I took a good picture this time.
All right.
But-
So Moira's name is added, just so everyone knows. Yep, obviously those who can't go,
I'm sorry.
you're all right?
Yeah.
All in favor? That's everyone, and we look forward to presentation and other.
I'll move the authorization for the NISBA Summer Law Conference.
Second.
Good. So Pat, you're going to that?
It's down in Binghamton.
Okay,
It
cool.
should relate to policy. I thought somebody should go.
Are there?
Thank you.
Okay, there's.
It's close.
There's folks that we know down there, so all right.
Thanks, Doug.
We appreciate that. That's good for policy. All in favor? That's everyone?
Is it a conflict of interest for me to vote on this?
Well, frankly, how many do we have?
Yeah, we have no.
Oh, okay. No, I mean, you're all right. That's, it's not nepotism if it's yourself, right?
Oh boy, a trip to Binghamton.
I hear
All
there's,
expenses paid.
I think it's free.
exactly. Anything else? We talked about our meeting on the 2nd, which is on Monday, Dr. Brown, not a Tuesday, on Monday,
Monday.
8 a.m.
8 a.m.
8 a.m.
Anything else for the good of the group? Friends, board members, anything? We're good? It is my opportunity to close the last meeting of the 17-18 school year. So thank you, everyone. Thanks, everybody. Congratulations to, if you've got a new job, congratulations. Mag, you're still good, man. You're good.
Back as the one, Matt and Sheila McHenry, all two.
Turn quick, I'm leaving.
So thank you, everyone, and that's it for me. I am out of here. All right.
Great. Good night, everyone.
Good night.